Have you ever felt like you were giving everything to someone who barely noticed you? You showed up, listened, supported, adjusted, and still felt like you were standing in the background of their life. When this happens, it is not because you are lacking value. It happens because constant giving teaches others that your presence is guaranteed. And when something feels guaranteed, it stops being respected. But what if the dynamic could change without confrontation, without emotional outbursts, and without chasing for validation? What if the shift happened silently, powerfully, and naturally? In this video, you will discover 9 Stoic attitudes that quietly flip the dynamic and restore your position. These attitudes do something unexpected. They awaken fear where there was comfort. They create awareness where there was indifference. The person who once ignored you begins to sense your distance, and with it the possibility of losing you for good. And the most important part is this: you will not need manipulation or games. Everything here comes from Stoicism, an ancient philosophy built on self-mastery, clarity, and inner strength. Stoicism teaches how to stay balanced when emotions rise and how to maintain dignity when the world tries to pull you off center. This philosophy was born thousands of years ago, yet it speaks directly to modern relationships. Why? Because it teaches a rare skill in a distracted world: the ability to separate what is in your control from what never was. Stoics understood that trying to change the feelings of someone who refuses to see your worth is wasted energy. True power comes from redirecting that energy back to yourself, where it can actually create change. Transformation begins internally, in your choices, your emotional discipline, and your responses. Epictetus taught that events themselves are neutral, but our reactions give them meaning. When you stop chasing explanations and start embodying calm certainty, something happens. The dynamic shifts. You become unreadable, you become steady, and this silent stability unsettles the person who once felt safe ignoring you. Doubt appears where certainty once lived. The fear of loss replaces indifference. You are no longer predictable, and suddenly you become memorable. Stoicism is not emotional withdrawal or cold distance. It is emotional intelligence in action. It is self-respect expressed without words. And the 9 attitudes you are about to learn are designed to build exactly that. The first attitude is strategic silence. Often, what shakes people the most is not what you say, but what you stop saying. When you no longer chase, justify, or react impulsively, the emotional rhythm changes. Silence used with intention becomes a powerful signal of self-worth, especially for someone who grew used to your instant replies, constant availability, and endless explanations. When you go quiet without drama, without announcements, and without trying to make a point, you force the other person to face their own thoughts. And that is uncomfortable. The person who once took your presence for granted starts to feel the absence of your energy, the absence of your attention, the absence of the noise you created just by being there. Marcus Aurelius wrote that silence carries immense power when it is backed by reason. Silence creates space, and in that space awareness grows. This is not disappearing. It is presence refined. You are still there, but no longer accessible by default. In a world overflowing with noise, those who master intentional silence become impossible to ignore. The second attitude is redirecting your focus back to yourself. When you spend too long trying to be seen by someone who refuses to look at you, you slowly lose connection with your own identity. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is to stop investing in someone else's attention and start reinvesting in your own life. This is not about pretending happiness or trying to provoke jealousy. It is real internal work. It is waking up and choosing to strengthen your body, your mind, your purpose, and your peace. When you treat yourself as a priority, your energy changes, your posture changes, your decisions become calmer, and your presence becomes grounded. This quiet evolution, happening without performance or explanation, deeply unsettles those who once ignored you. They realize you no longer need their validation to feel whole. The Stoics believed freedom begins when you stop needing external approval, and the moment you stop trying to be chosen is often the moment others begin to notice you again. You shift from seeking attention to commanding respect. Self-focus is not selfishness, it is recovery. The third attitude is controlled absence. Some people only understand the value of your presence when they are forced to feel its absence. And this absence must be intentional, calm and dignified. There is no announcement, no emotional exit, no explanation. You simply step back. Controlled absence is not punishment, it is self-protection. When someone is used to your availability, your immediate responses and your constant emotional labor, they feel the shift when you stop being there. Not because you left angrily, but because you chose to protect your energy. Seneca taught that sometimes the most powerful way to be noticed is to remove yourself from the scene. When done with dignity, absence creates reflection. The space you leave behind cannot be filled easily. Even pride struggles in that silence. And when absence is used at the right moment, it forces the person who underestimated you to question whether they have already lost you. The fourth attitude is emotional neutrality. If you want to disarm someone who thought they could control your reactions, give them nothing to react to. No arguments, no emotional explanations, no pleading, just calm. This is one of the hardest practices because it goes against instinct. Someone who is used to your emotional reactions, your urgency, your attempts to fix things, feels destabilized when they meet stillness instead. Epictetus explained that anyone can react emotionally, but mastery comes from responding with intention rather than impulse. And when you stay composed where chaos was expected, you silently reclaim your power. Emotional neutrality is not distance, it is command. It is the decision to remain stable regardless of provocation. When someone tries to pull you into old patterns and finds nothing to grab onto, the balance of power changes. The person who once triggered your reactions starts to feel uneasy because they no longer control the emotional atmosphere. Your calm becomes uncomfortable. Your composure reflects their instability back to them. And in that reflection, they see what they were never ready to face. The moment you refuse to engage in emotional chaos, the dynamic collapses. A game cannot exist if only one person is playing. The fifth attitude is quiet self-worth. There is a rare magnetism in someone who respects themselves without announcing it. No speeches, no proof, no performance. When you begin to care for yourself with consistency, how you dress, how you move, how you structure your days, something subtle but undeniable changes. Your confidence stops asking for permission, and those who once overlooked you feel the shift, because real self-worth does not need an audience. It shows in your posture. It shows in the way you speak. It shows in the energy you carry into a room. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that growth is the truest response to disrespect. Where you once shrank to be accepted, you now expand because you are complete. Self-worth changes the emotional temperature of every interaction. It raises the standard without saying a word. As your inner strength grows, your choices become clearer. You stop forcing connections. You stop chasing approval. You naturally distance yourself from what drains you and align with what nourishes you. And when you treat yourself with respect, the world adjusts accordingly. Even those who once failed to see your value begin to sense it. The sixth attitude is firm boundaries. Few things disrupt unhealthy dynamics more than a calm, consistent limit. The moment you decide what you will no longer tolerate and stand by it, the relationship begins to transform. Those who benefited from your flexibility feel the shift immediately. You are no longer available at any cost. Your energy is no longer negotiable. Boundaries are not rejection, they are structure. They define where you end and where others begin. Many people will resist them. Some will try to guilt you into old behaviors, but Stoic discipline does not bend to emotional pressure. Epictetus taught that response is power, and responding with clarity is one of the deepest acts of self-respect. Those who cannot accept your limits reveal that they were attached to your lack of them. Those who care will adapt. Healthy connections do not break under boundaries, they grow stronger because of them. The seventh attitude is selective generosity. Kindness is a virtue, but kindness without discernment becomes self-abandonment. When you give endlessly to those who never give back, exhaustion is inevitable. Selective generosity means you choose where your time, attention, and care go. It is the practice of offering your best only to those who value it. Seneca warned that generosity must be guided by wisdom. When you stop giving indiscriminately, people begin to understand that your presence is no longer guaranteed, and that realization changes everything. The person who once took you for granted begins to feel the weight of your absence. What once felt unlimited now feels rare. Your energy stops being an obligation and becomes a gift. You decide who receives it. And those who once used you are left confronting what they lost without ever appreciating. The eighth attitude is composed indifference. Nothing unsettles someone more than realizing they no longer hold emotional influence over you. But this indifference is not cruelty. It is emotional maturity. It is the quiet realization that not everything deserves your reaction, your explanation, or your concern. When you stop investing emotion in places where it is not respected, you free yourself. And that freedom is deeply noticeable to those who once depended on your attention. This attitude is the moment you decide that someone else no longer gets access to your emotional system. You stop reacting to the behaviors that once shook you. You stop monitoring what they think, say, or do. And the instant you release that concern, the balance changes. What once had power over you loses its effect. The person who relied on your reactions suddenly feels disconnected because the lever they used to pull no longer moves anything. Epictetus taught that energy should never be wasted on those who lack the capacity to recognize your value. When you internalize that truth, your peace becomes protected. This kind of indifference is not born from bitterness. It comes from clarity. It is the awareness that your inner stability is not negotiable, that your attention is not free, and that your emotional resources are finite. When someone realizes they can no longer influence you, a strange emptiness appears, because people who depend on control feel lost when it disappears. Your calm becomes their silence, your detachment becomes their confusion. In this stage, indifference is not distance, it is liberation. It is the breaking of emotional dependence. It is you returning to yourself. The ninth attitude is unshakable self-belief. Nothing is more compelling than someone who knows who they are and acts from that certainty. When your confidence is rooted in self-respect instead of external approval, you stop needing confirmation from anyone. Your actions become steady, your decisions become clear, and your presence becomes grounded. You enter spaces without needing to impress. You speak without seeking permission. You move without explanation. Marcus Aurelius taught that relying on yourself is not arrogance but wisdom, and wisdom is visible. When you no longer wait for validation and begin to move with purpose, even those who once overlooked you start to feel the shift. Not because you changed for them, but because you finally aligned with yourself. At that moment, the dynamic completes its transformation. You are no longer waiting to be chosen. You already made the choice, and that realization alters everything. The person who once underestimated you becomes aware that they lost access to someone who finally understood their own worth. And that realization stings because confidence does more than attract attention. It frees the one who carries it. Now you can see that these attitudes were never about winning against someone else. They were about rebuilding your inner foundation. They were about taking your power back from places where it was being drained. When you practice silence with intention, redirect your energy, set firm boundaries and strengthen your self-belief, you evolve. And when you evolve, your world responds differently. Some people will feel the change, some will notice it too late, but none of that controls you anymore because your attention has returned to where it always belonged. You see yourself clearly now. You are enough for yourself, and that is the source of real strength. Living in peace without needing approval, permission, or validation is the highest form of freedom. If this message connected with you, reflect on which of these attitudes you are ready to apply first. And remember this: when you learn to value yourself, everything around you reorganizes to match that standard.